What's going on, guys? It's BlazeTech here, and in today's video we're going to be talking about the basics of having a computer. Unfortunately, I haven't got a computer to build today. One, because I haven't got the money to do it, and two, because actually me just talking about it will just benefit you enough. So if you got a notepad or anything like that, take notes of what I'm going to explain about basics. And this is more for people that are beginning to build their first computer, if they want to build their first computer. And the thing is, what I would recommend, and just what I'd recommend as for hardware builds and the things that you need, such as peripherals, anything like that. So getting first and foremost thing, I honestly believe the case is the most important thing. So with cases, you got three sizes. You got a small case, you got a medium case or a middle case, and you got a full case. When you have a small case, such as a Corsair or something like that, you've not got many options to actually upgrade your computer in the future. So if you're gonna do a build and it's a one-off thing, then that's totally fine. But if you think or you know for a fact that you're going to be upgrading in the future, then I 100% recommend at least getting a middle sized tower, because I've got the Fractal Design R5 and that's a middle range tower, and it's pretty good. I can do upgrades, I can do anything I want with it, and I can pretty much upgrade everything to how I want it. However, if I want to do something like water cooling, I'm never going to get into water cooling, I don't think. But I can't do anything like a water cooling build with a medium range case, because it's just not big enough to support everything like tubing, the adhesives, and the big tubes. I don't know what you call them exactly, but you know the big ones I'm talking about. But if you have a full size case, then of course upgrades, no matter what you're doing, such as a 3090, which is a very big graphics card. My friend has a graphics card. I built the PC for him, and it was heavy. I was honestly blown away by how big it was and how heavy it was compared to my 1070, which is like a baby compared to a 3080 and 3090. And of course, if you're doing anything like you want to try water cooling, then getting a full-size case is definitely the way to go. So the second thing is, when it comes to RAM and which RAM you should you get DDR3? Definitely not anymore. Before, yes, that was the option back then, but just get DDR4, just keep it nice and simple. And should you go with 8 or 16 or 32 or 64 or all the way up to 128 gigabytes. Now, what I recommend nowadays is, because you're most likely going to be multitasking. You're probably gonna have a game on one monitor and, let's say, Google Chrome, and you're doing whatever, like watching Netflix on the other monitor, for example. So I definitely recommend getting 16 gigs at minimum. 8 gigs, it was cool, but no reason to get it anymore. And 32 gigs, then I would recommend that for not gamers, but probably people that are more into video editing, Photoshop, graphic design, like heavy duty graphic design, heavy duty video editing, things like that. I recommend 32 gigs. 64 gigs, I don't really think it's necessary. 128 gigs, I definitely don't think it's necessary, but definitely go 16 gigs if you're doing some multitasking, some gaming, or small Photoshop and editing work here and there. I've got 16 gigs in my system, and I've been doing Photoshop and Adobe Premiere literally for years and years and years, maybe 6 years now, and I've always had 16 gigs, and it's honestly just done fine with me. And I have a old Gen, I think 8 i7 processor, and honestly it's doing fine. And as for the cooler for the CPU, I could use the stock if I wanted to, but I got a third party Hyper 212 Evo CPU coolant fan, and that's pretty much it. You can get other things like water coolers, which are more advanced, which you got water cooling, which is even more advanced. I've done fine with the cooler that I have, which is a Hyper 212 Evo, a i7 Gen 8 processor, 16 gigs, and of course, like I said before, a mid-range tower, which is totally done fine for me. The next thing that you actually got to consider is which processor should you get. Now, of course, I think the 11th gen is out now. Should you get an 11th gen? Should you get 10th gen? Should you get an i5, an i7, and an i9? Now, I honestly believe just get an i7, get a 11th gen if you can, and of course get a 11th gen supporting motherboard as well. With motherboards, you can literally just look it up online, see if it's compatible with your CPU. You can get those generated things, or you can simply type into Google, is this i7, whatever the code is, processor compatible with this motherboard MSI, I don't know, X38 for example. You can literally just Google that and it'll give you the answer. No need to stress about it. If it says yes, just cool, it works. If it says no, pick another motherboard or pick another processor that's actually compatible with that motherboard, or vice versa. Now as for graphics cards, I have a very old 1070 in here. I have not upgraded to the 2000 series nor 3000 series, and as you may know if you've seen my previous video, click here if you have not. The 4000 series is coming out assumably later this year and it'll be a nice upgrade, but you also got to make sure your CPU supports it, otherwise you'll bottleneck your system. You don't want to do that. Bottlenecking will be the next video that will go over a brief rundown on what bottlenecking is, but you don't want to bottleneck your system. That's just not good. If you want to go into light gaming, then I definitely recommend a 3060, and a 3060 should run you now with mid-range to high-range graphics. Then something like a 3070 that would run typically between high to very high, and a 3080 and 3090 that would generally run a very high to maximum settings depending on the game you're playing, and of course depends what monitor you're getting. And that brings us into the other thing, which is monitors. So the thing is with monitors, should you go all out on a monitor by 144 Hz or 240 Hz or 500 Hz, which ASUS has surprisingly done. I can't wait to eventually hopefully see that in real life, but 500 Hz, insane. I have a 60 Hz monitor. I'm old school. I have a 60 Hz monitor. I have a BenQ, which is one for tournament, and another BenQ. I'm not sure if it specs my second BenQ, which is this one in the camera, but I bought it from my friend because he didn't want it anymore. So I was like, yo, I need a second monitor, and I like my monitors being the same brand. So if I have an ASUS monitor, I like to have two. If I have one BenQ monitor, I want two BenQ monitors. I don't know if I'm OCD, but do that. Leave them in comments below. Leave them in comments below if you like your monitors the same brand, such as ASUS, BenQ, or whatever it may be. But honestly, with monitors, if you're getting your first monitor and it's your first build, honestly just get a 60 Hz monitor that at least runs you 1080p, and just make sure at least has lower than 5 millisecond response time. Then get that as your first monitor, see if you like it. Then if you don't like it, learn what you like, because different people like different companies, different people like different saturations, color tones, IPS, and different display panels like that. So just get a cheap one, to be honest. You can run up probably $200 and you get a monitor that's 60 Hz, lower than 5 millisecond response time, and probably 26 inches, which is what I recommend. I've got a 26-inch monitor and a 23-inch monitor, and that's pretty much what I run. And other than that, power supplies are extremely important. If you're going for a build that at least has an i7, has 16 gigs of RAM, and has got a 3060, and you're running a water cooler, and I would recommend definitely at least getting 800 watts, because this leaves some overhead, especially with the 3000 series of graphics cards. Now I have a old supply in my system. Now I have a partial modular in my power supply, and I'll throw it up what that means. So pretty much it's a power supply and it's got all the cables connected, and it's really ugly, to be honest. I regret getting my power supply. So if you're going to get a power supply, get a full modular power supply. And of course, like I said just before, if you're going with those particular specs, I'd recommend at least minimum 800 watt power supply. And if you're going to upgrade in the future, maybe even go higher than 800 watts, go 900 or 1000 watts, just so you got a lot more overhead if you know you're going to upgrade. And of course, make sure that you get a good power supply. Don't get a cheap one. It's very bad if you do that. Like, I've seen people get things like supersonic and they're super cheap, they're unreliable, they're not good. Go for good companies, gold or platinum certified power supply instead of a silver or bronze power supply, because it'll just do you so much better in the long run. And as for gaming mouses or gaming keyboards, honestly, you can just get a combo pack. Get a cheap $30-40 combo pack, go do that, see how you like it, then upgrade in the future later if you need to, because upgrading in the future is definitely easier than getting something that's way too over budget, and then you freak out because of price, and then you're like, I got this keyboard, it cost me $200, I can't afford it. And that's what you don't want to do. Just get everything cheap as you can but still good. So what I'd recommend for a new build is once again, just to go over a overview, is a medium range case, a 800 watt power supply, a 3060, at least an i7, minimum 16 gigabytes of RAM, because you're probably going to be multitasking. You get one monitor, at least 60 Hz, below 5 millisecond response time, and for mouse and keyboard, just get a combo pack. It's not that hard. And for motherboard, of course, motherboards don't really matter. Don't cheap out on a motherboard, but don't go for a motherboard that has RGB, because honestly, the companies, yeah, it's cool to be honest, but they're just racking up the prices because it has RGB, it can support this and that, and most of the time you don't need that sort of stuff, to be honest. Make sure when you're getting a motherboard that's compatible with your CPU. That's very important. A good motherboard should generally run you maybe between $250 to $300. But other than that, have you guys built your first PC, or did you buy a pre-built PC? Let me know in the comments below, and if you guys got any questions or anything like that, also leave them in the comments below, and we'll talk to you guys next time. It's BlazeTech. I'm out. Bye. Remember to click on screen for another video. See you next time.